Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about writing about self-evaluation and self-improvement. Now, there are many exercises out there that require you to write about yourself, to take stock, to see where things are, where you want to go, and how to get there, i.e. self-improvement. Today we're going to be specifically looking at a course in the APCO 421 class, and using this specific assignment and the concept of dialogic coaching to form an argument. This is one of a variety of support services that we have through the ACU Online Writing Center. We have many webinars such as this that delve into general topics as well as specific assignments. We have FAQs, we have write-ups, we have templates that will help with the formatting, we have answers to frequent questions, we have appointments where you can sign up for and get feedback on your writing. You can also send us quick questions by email. But if you're signing up for an appointment, they're 1-hour appointments, and they come in 2 general flavors. There are synchronous appointments. These are not real-time appointments, where you schedule time. By the time that time rolls around, you upload a copy of your paper and any special request or feedback, and then we look at your paper and send you feedback, generally within 24 hours. For a real-time phone or Zoom appointment, you start out the same way. You sign up for a time, and you give us a copy of your paper by the time that time rolls around, and then you meet us either in a phone call or in a Zoom room, and we talk. And you can ask questions, and if you're a visual learner, share a screen so you can see the things being discussed, highlighted, etc. in real time. And it's really a question of what works best for you and your schedule, which may change from assignment to assignment. If you like to be able to ask a lot of questions in real time and get the answers, a real-time appointment might be the thing for you. If you prefer to be able to take stock and look at the feedback in your own time, an asynchronous appointment might be more to your preference. Either way, you'd start by going to my.acu.edu, and then under the links of resources, you could select Online Writing Center, and then we'll have instructions and videos that will appear there to guide you through the process. But the general process is starting with my.acu.edu. You'd be sent to WC Online, and from there, you make your appointment. You'd have a link to submit the draft of your paper, and then we'd send you feedback either in real time or in less than 24 hours. Now, do make sure to check out our webinar guide, because we are always adding to the selection of courses. So for example, if you're in the Family and Marriage Counseling and program, FAMO, you would go ahead and select that on the guide, and we'd see all the courses that have tie-ins with that program. As all the webinars that have tie-ins with that program, I should say. Things that you'll see me referring to that you might want to make use of now. The APA course paper template, you'll see me using that later. So if you want to grab a copy, there's a link. We have a YouTube channel to make it easy to watch our webinar videos on the go, and a blog where we go into different topics. Now, we're going to be exploring a couple things. We're going to start with a review of some of the principles of dialogic coaching before we talk about this assignment for APCO 421. This is a week 2 assignment 1, applying dialogic coaching, and we'll talk about how to cite some key sources, and we'll finish with a discussion of outlining and drafting, how you take the instructions from the assignment and use it to build an outline to plan your thoughts into a paper that does all the things you need to, that can get full credit, and will stay within the length limit. Let's dive in. So, dialogic coaching. Let's start with that first word, dialogic. Dialogic means relating to or in the form of a dialogue. Now, dia is sometimes translated as to, but it more properly means through. A log, it refers to logos, the words, through words, meaning that there's communication. People are discussing. So a dialogic approach is one that's designed to build understanding or greater insight through the use of questioning and dialogue, and communication back and forth. Dialogic teaching, similarly, is a method of instruction that is used to facilitate interpersonal learning and generally tends to use a conversational style that's designed to build up understanding and insight. You ask leading questions that guide thoughts. You allow people to formulate their thoughts through this dialogue, through this discussion. Now, dialogic coaching. This is something where we're specifically looking at the goals and that trying to reach a destination. And one of the easiest ways to differentiate dialogical coaching from the other main approaches is who is setting the goals and who are those goals focused on. Now, one way to understand where dialogical coaching sits is to look at two different poles. On the one hand, facilitative coaching, and the other, directive coaching. Let's start with directing coaching because that's the one that people are usually the most familiar with. Directive coaching, as the name suggests, is about being told what to do. The coach is considered the expert, and they do most of the thinking. They tell you what to do. They have their strategy for achieving whatever it is. And just think of high school sports as a model of directive coaching. The coach says, oh, do this. Oh, they're trying this. Do that. And so this works well when the coach is an expert who's specifically there to provide that expertise. If you think about a football game, the coach can see a lot of things that the players can't because the players are running around. The coach gets to see the big picture. Now, there are reasons why that's very helpful in many situations. There are also reasons why it's less helpful than others. When there's less of that gulf, or when the learner or students and has their own agency, their own agendas, their own things that they want, which may not be the same as what the coach would think or what the coach would want. So if we look on the opposite extreme, the facilitative pole, we have a model where the coach is not sharing their expertise. They're more there to help the other person doing the thinking. Now, there are a couple ways that this can be implemented. One of those is where you have three people or three groups. You've got the student, the teacher, the coach. And the coach is there just to kind of facilitate things and make periodic little clarifications and adjustments. And the teacher is doing most of the stuff, and they are planning that. There's also another extreme where you just have coach and the student or learner. And you might think of athletic coaching, where you have the someone who comes in and says, okay, I want to work on my upper body. And they say, okay, and then let's go and I'll help you follow your schedule here. You've got your workout plan already selected. And all right, I'm just going to help you implement this. I'll remind you, oh, don't skip that leg day. Don't skip that machine like you said. Now that's think of that as light intervention. Now on the dialogical middle, we have the coaches there to share expertise and doing it with some regularity, but making some choices about when it's a good time and when it's not. Because the emphasis is that the coach and the teacher, which may be the student in some cases, so this could be a two groups or three groups, that they are thinking about things together and that the goal is set by the student. So if there are only two people, then it's coach and student to talk together to form what the student wants to do or figure out how to get there. But overall, it's the student's goals, the student's in the driving seat. And so that the rest is kind of having that conversation. Okay, so you want to do this. All right, how would you like to get there? Here are some options. And this is a model that allows you the benefit of the expert insight without making them or assuming that they will take control, because there's this joint goal selection and joint strategizing about how you would like to get there. And this is how a lot of people prefer trip planning. Not everyone, but how a lot of people prefer trip planning, where this idea of, okay, we have the friend or the travel agency, we ask a couple questions, but we're trying to plan it out. As opposed to on the directive end, you go and say, okay, Mom, Dad, where should I go for a honeymoon? And they say, well, you should go to Hawaii. Hey, here's why. Here, we've planned it out for you. On the opposite side, you could have a guide who just hops in the bus and asks their questions, and occasionally like, oh, well, let's not go there. That restaurant isn't great. But for the most part, they just sit there and answer questions that you have. So different ways of planning. It's not that what is intrinsically wrong, but partly a question of what you want and is most helpful for getting what you desire, which can and often does include more agency as you get older, more mature, more developed in your career. So at this point, let's take a look at that assignment for APCO. So this is coming from the Executing Organizational Change course. And if we look at the instructions, it starts with the preamble where they tell us the purpose of the class: to evaluate and apply dialogic coaching in an organizational setting. And we have a note that this should be a 2 to 3 page paper. And I'm just going to note that 500 to 750 words, a full page in APA style, 12-point font, double-spaced lines, 1-inch margins all around. That's going to be about 250 words for a full paper. So when they say 2 to 3 pages, they're not talking like 1 page and then 2 sentences at the top of the second one. That's around 2 full pages. So a 2 to 3 page paper on your evaluation of dialogic organizational development. There's a note to make sure that you're using the week's resources, so that means you should be citing and referencing them to support your statements. And it should specifically include your understanding of what it means, as well as your view of strengths and weaknesses. Reminder, at least 3 texts, 3 different references that are being used here to support your evaluation, and thinking of either your current organization or one you would like to work for. What ways would this approach be most effective? So, all right, that's pretty fair. Let's take a look at the rubric. Now, there's a lot of stuff here, but the guide for that ratings thing, it's basically saying if you want full credit, you should do everything that the instructions say. And then we have a set of criteria. So accuracy. It's clear from the writing of the paper that the important concepts are understood and accurately applied. All elements of the assignment are covered as presented. Okay, so have you written about it? Is it specific? Have you done exactly what they ask? Depth. Are the concepts applied to the paper in a thorough manner that is clear? Application. It's being considered in the context and experience of the student. A unique application shows a thorough understanding of the topics. So this is a reminder that you should be as specific as possible here, because if it's generic, if you're talking about, an imaginary company, well, these things are important, that's not nearly as helpful, and that's not showing an understanding of the material nearly as well as if you're using a specific example, whether it's a place you work now or a place you want to work. And then there's the note that, or the requirement that it be 500 to 750 words, so don't make it too long, don't make it too short. You have the in-text citations and references, and at least 3 references specifically, and that care has been taken in proofreading and editing. So a whole 20% of this grade is basically quality control. Have you done the things, written a paper of the specified length that has the minimum number of references, and you have proofreaded and edited it, run spelling and grammar check and other things like that to make sure that it's polished. So that's the difference between a high A and a B minus. So definitely it's saying they're expecting this to be a high quality paper, and that part of that is going to be it coming in within the specified range. So since they're requiring that you reference a number of sources, let's take a look at the readings for this week and how to reference them. Now here on this slide, I've combined 2 pieces of information. One is the course text listed in the syllabus, and the other is the required readings from the week 1 module. Now, if we look at this first source, if you're going to be citing it, we need to do some minor modifications. Now, this is a book that is written by a single author, as opposed to an edited volume where different people are writing each chapter. So because of that, we're going to reference it as a book. So that's Takis B, 2021, Leading Positive Organizational Change, Energize, Redesign, Gel. And that should be written in sentence case, meaning the same way that you capitalize it as a sentence in APA style. So note that in the syllabus, it's using title case. In the reference that we have on the right-hand side, it's using sentence case. And note that the ISBN number that's included in the syllabus would not be included in the reference entry. It's helpful to have the ISBN to order the exact copy of the book, the exact edition of the book, but that's not something that's included in APA style. So how would we cite that? Well, the author and the publication year are the two pieces of information. And depending on whether we are mentioning the author in the body of the sentence or just using a parenthetical citation, we'll have one of the two forms that you see here. Let's take a look at the next one. So this is a journal article from the Harvard Business Review. And here we have the three authors, Beer, Eisenstadt, and Spector. Note that their names, we just use the initials for the middle and first names, that we have slightly different from the syllabus, from the list of the Module 1 readings. There's an N dash, which is a little bit longer than the hyphen, and for the page range. And that because there are three authors here, three or more is rule in APA style, we abbreviate the list to the first author and then et al, et space al period. It's basically meaning beer and so forth. So rather than write the whole list of authors, we have that abbreviation. We use that immediately the first time the source is cited. This next one, it's similar thing. We have three authors, so we abbreviate it to Sirkin et al. And then for this last one, we have two authors. And there are a couple things I want to draw your attention to. The first is in the reference entry. Even though there are only two authors, there's a comma that you add before the ampersand when you're writing in APA style. When you're writing the reference in APA style, that is. So Cotter JP, comma, ampersand. And the second is that because there are two authors, we list both authors in the parenthetical citation that's separated by an ampersand. If it's outside of the parentheses, like in the body of the sentence, then we write out the word and. All right, so let's now talk about outlining and drafting. Now, when you are approaching a paper like this, a high-level undergraduate course or a graduate course, then we want to make sure that our paragraphs are organized in a clear and coherent and argumentative fashion. And you may have been introduced to the meal plan in your studies. And I will say the meal plan is an excellent tool, but it was designed for first-year freshman writers. It was developed at the Vanderbilt Writing Center for that purpose, to teach people who are arriving in college what the expectations are for their first year of writing. Now, this is APCO 421, so fourth year level, high level undergrad, and so we want to make sure that we're developing arguments to the depth that is required and expected to get full credit. So we have a couple webinars that I'd strongly recommend watching if this is something that's new to you. We have our Beyond Summary webinar on adding analysis and synthesis. That's a 1 hour webinar. We go into some depth on this topic. We also have a more focused one about specifically adding synthesis that I recommend, the Synthesis and Consequences webinar. The no-tears plan for paragraph writing, in brief, states to start your paragraphs like this, with a topic sentence that states what you're writing about in this paragraph, what the main claim is, if you will, that you'll convince the reader of, to follow that with evidence and or argumentation to support that claim, to analyze the evidence, which is to say, to discuss it and state how it connects to your topic, and then to repeat that as necessary, because sometimes you'll need more evidence and analysis to make that claim. After you've repeated that, you're going to need to add some synthesis that says what all these things mean when put together. So don't just say, well, so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that. Tell us, well, what should you do in light of that? And then you want to, when you have wrapped up your argument, you either want to finish your discussion with a conclusion or transition to either get us to the next paragraph or to wrap up this discussion so that we start the next one with the, okay, done with that point. We'll talk about this more in a later. At this point, if you haven't already, I strongly recommend grabbing a copy of our APA course paper template because you'll see me using it, and if you follow along as you go, many of the tasks will be easier. I have here a copy of the APA course paper template, and here we have a number of things designed for you to fill it in. And for people using this template for the first time, I often get questions about, well, what should the paper be titled? And the answer is that a course paper type should be descriptive, but not too long. Now, that does not require at all that it have variety. That is not something that APA style emphasizes. It doesn't need to be poetic, it doesn't need to be terribly original, but if you just called it Week 2, Assignment 1, Applying Dialogic Coaching, that's fine. That tells you what you need to know. So let's take a look now. And fill in your name, your affiliation, the course, the instructor, the date this is turning in, and whatever you just select there, you want that to be the title of your paper as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take out this placeholder stuff that shows you the different ways of formatting this with headings and such. And we're also going to take out the placeholder references. These are just to show the different ways that you can format types of references. So instead, we want to begin by copy and pasting the instructions from the assignment. Now, this is just a straight copy and paste. And the next thing you're going to do is start removing things that we don't need to pay attention to. So, instructions, okay, yeah, we get that that's the instructions. We don't need to focus on that. So I just crossed it out. Follow APA guidelines, all of your assignments should be, so we're not going to repeat that, belabor it. And now we have a guide of sorts. And this is one that, as you get at least 3, you can then cross this off. But let's keep in mind that in APA style, when you use a source, when you cite it, you are required to include it in your references list, and vice versa. So if you know that you're going to be using all 4 the required course readings, and you make a point of making sure that you use all of them, you can go ahead and add those to your references list now. Save yourself some time. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's start with the course text here. Alright, here we have author, initial, publication year, title of the book, the edition, and the publisher. Great. Next one. Now we have this article from Harvard Business Review. So you got the authors, the date, the title, the publication, the information for that, the page range. Another Harvard Business Review article. And a third. Now, the question comes up, do you need to have a URL or a DOI, a digital object identifier, for these Harvard Business Review articles? And the question comes up, how did you access them? Because you want to give information for the thing that you accessed. So if you read these on the website, that on the Harvard Business Review website, then you would want to include a URL for that. If you had a print copy, then this would be fine. Now, if I go ahead and Google the title and the journal information, we see that the electronic access information is up here. It is a publicly readable, publicly available document on their website. Now, you always want to be citing the version that you are reading, because there may be changes that you don't expect. And a common one is they might have images that were licensed for the print version, but not online. But if you did use the online version here, then you would want to go ahead and add the review like there. And note that there's no retrieve from. That was done away with in a previous version of APA style. APA 7th edition, you just include the URL like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and look back at these instructions here. And let's break down these bullet points. Your understanding of it. Okay, you might summarize that as what dialogic organizational development means to me. So, your definition. So, starting with the definition there, and this is a note, this is really saying include at least 3 references here in this discussion. That's just why I've indented there. And now thinking about your current organization. Well, if you're going to be evaluating your organization, and tell us what organization it is. Things like, oh, how large is it? And you can write your own questions that you want to answer because you'll know the things that are more important to you. As an example, if I was going to be critiquing or analyzing an organization that I've worked with before, I'm going to take my alma mater, the University of San Diego, went there for undergrad. Now, there was a interesting debate between some of the staff members while I was there about how much guidance to give to the students in student government. Whether it was supposed to be something that was more on the facilitative pole, where they just sit back and let the students mostly do student government by themselves for the most part, or whether it was a directive telling them what to do. And this is something where, of course, people going to college are developing their own leadership and they have their own ideas that they're working out. So I think the students wanted it to be more on the, well, many of the students wanted to be more facilitative, where there's the occasional, oh yes, here's how you do that. But for the most part, they were doing their own thing. And there was one staff person who really wanted it to be directive because they thought it would be more efficient for their time and they had a lot of other things to do. Now, where they ended up in the middle was agreeing for a dialogical perspective, because there were things where if you just arrived at this new school, you won't know how the systems work, and it's helpful to have that expert conversation involved as you are formulating things. But we had this disagreement between different parties where some wanted it to be one because it felt the most efficient, the most desirable for them and what they were working on. Now, which you pick is, of course, a conversation between different stakeholders, and what is more suitable for a different organization. If someone has an administrative assistant, some people want them to be a sounding board. Other people want it to be, okay, please do this, make copies, print this, post this announcement, etc. And that's the kind of thing where you want to look and see, okay, what are your needs? And the needs can include more than just one person's. If someone's in that administrative assistant position and they're looking at professional advancement, then very likely they're interested in more than just getting directives about what to do. Or they might have other interests, and they might say, well, okay, just tell me what you want, we'll do it, don't bother me, and then I'll have more time and energy to focus on the other things that I like. And so it's not a question of one thing being better for all situations. It's a question of what is ideal for or which parties, and how do you work out that compromise? And as you describe your organization, tell us about the people involved that may influence this. I have known executives who love meetings and really love having their team weighing in on these key points, and other people who prefer to really lead the meeting and just have other people weigh in. And that's the question of, is it going to be dialogical or facilitative? So tell us about your organization. Tell us about it briefly, because we have 2 to 3 pages. And so if we look at this here and see, okay, we have, tell us what this means to you. Tell us about the organization and how this approach would work. And we're going to want to have at least probably, this is probably going to be the intro to the organization. And then 1 or more paragraphs about how that approach would work. And then after that, you're going to want some sort of conclusion where you wrap things up. So you can use the no tiers plan to look at, for example, this here. Okay, tell the organization, make a claim about it. Like Dialogical Coaching would be a great fit for this university or for this business that I work in. Okay, give us some evidence about it, and what does it need? And this could potentially be consolidated in 1 sentence. There are 7,000 students, 1,000 employees, and they are doing a major reorganization right now. So they need to decide how things are going to work in this current setup in this particular office, for example. And then give us more information as you see fit and relevant, keeping in mind you're trying to convince the reader of your point. Okay, now make sure that you refer to these references, and you can look at this and kind of get an idea of where you're probably going to be using some of these. So choosing strategies for change, well, that's probably going to come up in this section where you're talking about selecting the approach to use. When saying why it's necessary to work on this, you're probably going to be citing this one here, and probably this one as well. So you can, with some idea as you do the reading, start filling this out and have not only sentences, according to these authors, blah, 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 and fit it in and have written out, before you start writing full paragraphs, some idea of what you're going to cite for which part of your paragraphs. So let us just take a quick stock of what we've talked about today. So we've reviewed the principles of dialogic coaching. We looked specifically at this assignment from APCO 421. We talked about how to cite key sources, and we finished with the discussion of how to take the assignment instructions and start expanding that into an outline for you to plan and draft your paper. If you have any additional questions, you are more than welcome to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to schedule an appointment, or stop by the Writing Center website to see more resources. That's it for today. Catch you later.